Ko pai roa te maunga. Waikato te awa nā ti tahu Ngāti Whāua te iwi. Ko Adele tuku ingoa. I'm the General Manager Manaaki for Tauhara North. I heard the word fill in just before I got up. It's happened to me twice. Actually 3 times. One, when we opened our power station. I had to fill in for the then CEO. Last year we were in Vancouver. We got invited to the Energy for Indigenous People. We were one of the presenters. We got up on the stage and my board member asked me to look pretty, so I said, I'll try my hardest. So I was holding the tonga and she got a bit of stage fright because the room was about 4 times as big as this. All the Indigenous people from North America, hundreds of chiefs, all the government officials. So I was standing kind of over there, looking like that and trying to, because this is my better side for the camera. So I was trying to look good. And then she came up behind me and she said, I can't do it. I was like, oh, you're kidding me. She said, no, I can't do it. Can you do it? And then just basically shoved the microphone into my chest in front of the whole crowd. And if Rawiri, I think I saw him, I walked past them, I wore a hat like yours because I was going to try and stand out. I took that hat off when I got off the stage because everyone started following me around the Vancouver Conference Centre. So yeah, I try to take from home all those things. When I watch that video, that's the video that opens on our website. We decided when we created our website, 80% of the whānau live away from home, and they have done for 3 or 4 generations. Let's welcome them back in. Me and my cousins, when I was at uni, they used to pick me up from the airport. We'd drive home, it's about 45 minutes from here. We'd get to a place called Rainbow Mountain. If you know it, you turn off to go to Kaingaro Murupara. We'd be round the corner to Waiotapu, and one of us would always say the same line, isn't Reparoa beautiful? And we'd hold that moment. If Taika's in the room always watching, it's a moment that he could recreate. We're just taking it in where we're from. So I see that, it reminds me of the beautiful places that we're from. Some of my cousins go, is that really Reparoa? We go, that's really Reparoa. That's where we're from. So out of Reparoa, if you don't know, we got 2 of the best rugby players in the world come out of Reparoa. Both captains, All Black captain, Sam came. And then the curry boy who was the Sevens captain. Same year, out of a community of 400 people. That's where we come from. We're also known for our mighty Reparoa Razorbacks, our league team. Yesterday, we fed well one of their leaders. If you've ever seen him, Peter Wedahiko Music, hashtag saxophone player. We laid him to rest yesterday, which is where most of my iwi are today, cleaning up the marae. In fact, I just said, I'm getting texts, Kazi, where did the gazebos go? I took a photo, I'm seriously at a conference. I think they think I'm being that lazy cousin that went home and not helping with the cleanup, so I had to show, because someone said, I'll take a photo of you on the stage, and I'm proving where I am, because I think they're calling me mangere back at the marae. So yeah, we've got our Razorbacks and Uncle Peter, who we had a laugh yesterday because he recorded his wife on his YouTube page and she got more hits than he did. So he removed her from his page. So we've got rugby players, musicians, league players, and we've got 2 businesses that make us the land flowing with milk and honey. We've got Fonterra and Arataki at Bini B. So those are the things that we're famous for, apart from the beautiful whenua that you just saw on that video. No one's actually told me how to control the screen, is it that? No. Push a button, we'll see what happens. Can I go back? Hey, okay, got it. The picture on your right, that's the ora kei korako that our kai karinga did at the end. And that was one of our rangatahi that's come up through the ranks, who's been asked to do our karinga for us. That's the dream for us. That's our original papakainga. It's the only advantage we have of early settlers coming through Arohi, that they painted what it used to look like. So that's what it looked like, ora kei korako, the last scene that you saw, that geothermal area. That's our ukaipo, that's our papakainga, that's our aspiration and what we do today. I used to look at that photo and close my eyes. Some of my cousins thought I was being weird, but I'd close my eyes and I imagine the kids laughing, everyone playing, the smell of smoke and fire, and just a community that was being there together, united for a single cause for the whānau, for their people. We don't own that anymore. That's a tourist attraction. So when we look at it, The next goal, hope he never sees this if it's live, the next goal was to actually acquire that and to bring it back for our people. So we've got the same story as much of you in this room, a story of the Crown coming. So our lands were taken for power generation, so hydroelectricity, the flooding of this area, so that could be generated for the good of all New Zealanders. The picture on the right is our tupuna ariki, tahu matua. So yes, we have a Ngāti Tahu, we have a Te Arawa whakapapa, but we will say that we're Ngāti Tahu, the people of Tahu Matua. Some say he came on a bird, and others say that his waka looked like a bird. Whatever version is true, we just know we're here because I'm here. Yeah, I'm his descendant. So the people of Tauhara North, we are his descendants. We have a whakatauki at the top, kia mau ki te whenua, whakamahi a te whenua, hei painga mō ngā uri whakatipuranga, hold on to the land, make use of the land and the resources for current and future generations' well-being. And that's basically what the kōrero is going to be about today. We'll stick true to the kōrero of our trust, and I'll walk you through the story. So, kia mau ki te whenua, holding on to the land, our kuia tupuna for all of us in Māoridom, Dame Whina Kupa, famous words that we hang on to. When we had a strategy session a couple of years ago, we watched the Māori Land March. Because some of us, maybe not all of us in this room, we weren't alive back then, so we had to watch a video, and you could see the kaha of our people going in, and they were in the front, all the old people. You're like, far out. Like, I'm young and supposed to be energetic, but look at our kaumātua. So we've held on to that, hold on to the land that we have now. Tauhara North was originally over 10,000 acres. We now own 360 hectares. It used to be, we tell a funny story, but it's a true story. The Japanese helped us build our first power station. So we're Tauhara North number 2. Their people told us they only like dealing with number 1, so where's number 1? We're like, oh, true, where is number 1? So it started a bit of a history hikoi for us. Our tupuna realised back in the late 1800s that the Crown was getting a bit too interested in our whenua. And the area that they were looking at in particular it's a hot lake. And underneath that hot lake is a huge amount of sulphur. So they got together and they said, we've got to keep them away from our whenua. We're going to partition the land. It must have broke their heart when they did it. But they petitioned the land, and they did make Tauhara North number 1, number 2, and number 3. Tauhara North number 1 is no longer in existence. It paid for the survey costs to the Crown. Number 3 is now known as Tauhara Moana, and then we are number 2, and there were 34 original shareholders in that block back in the 1800s, and I'm a descendant of one of those today. Where the arrow is, that's Rotokawa. I put it there just in case people think, because we're Tauhara North, they think it's the Tauhara. These are the names of all the reservoirs through the central North Island. Tauhara North has the Rotokawa Reservoir beneath it. Because we're in a room of Māori, people might think that I'm trying to claim the whole of the central North. I promise I'm not. I'm only here to talk about where that arrow is going to, Rotokawa. So we have a trust order. We're a Ahu Whenua Trust under Te Tere Whenua Māori. I made a statement about shareholders. From the 34, we now have just over 1,000. We look after just over 9,000 whānau in total. We're a little bit different from other Ahu Whenua trusts where our owners and our trustees decided that whānau to them meant more than the people that were toto. So they allow in-laws. So I'll talk about it later, but we have a series of tautoko that we give to the whānau through grants and scholarships and other things. But they've allowed us to give that koha, or that support, to people's spouses. There's a running joke, and if Mana was here, our CEO, he would say that Adele's cousins are always the ones that come in with 3 spouses. So yes, in our trust, you're only allowed 1 spouse, 1 registered spouse. So there's no confusion for our team they're trying to process. We're like, huh? Yeah. So 1 spouse. So in total, 9,000 people. For those 9,000 people, our trust operations looks like this. One of my mates at work, he said, you had to put a cow on there? I said, well, when I talk about the business, we've only got cows and avocados. So I had a choice between a cow and an avocado with that, if you're looking at it. So starting on the far right for me, Ngā Whāriki, energy. So we've got a geothermal reservoir. When our tupuna came in, if you've ever been to Reparoa, you've been blessed by our fog and our sunny climate. It's freezing. It was freezing there yesterday at the tangihanga. No wonder he was drawn to the Ngā Whāriki, to our waiariki. So we've generated business and income from that, and it's the mainstay of the trust. I've tried to put it sort of like a higuri-piguri road, because that's really our journey. Because the next thing we did when we got some money, we knew we had to look after our people. So we moved into toi ora wellbeing, where we run things like a hononga whānau. Half of our grants in total go there, so like a few $1 million is going into health this year. And then in mātauranga, and the other thing we do in toi ora is, and I have to say it because my sister's in the room, she's here with K3. We were brought up in Kahununu. My mum used to bring us all the time back to Reparoa, but we were raised in a little community called Whakatū. My dad worked at the freezing works, and we're old girls of, if she's here, she's probably laughing, she's a lot younger than me. We're old girls of Mangatere Primary School. And then for some reason, all the kids from Whakatū, actually, Rīpeka. It's my brother's wife's auntie. You see someone clapping and you have a look and you go, hang on a minute, I know that person. Yeah. So we were raised in Whakatū, went to school there, but all the kids in Whakatū, you either went to Karamu or Havelock North. My mum picked Havelock, so we're like the only Māori kids at school for years. But have to talk about them just briefly, I diverse, because when I saw what happened over there this year and on the coast, I also do mediation for the Māori Land Court, and I'd been into places like Mōtio and Omahu, just devastating. And the fact that we had hung out there, played basketball there, swum there, had kai there, eaten through all the houses, we've got aunties in Omahu, was just devastating to us. So for those of you in the room who are from those areas, like ka aroha kia koutou, and you're also looking after our people, and we know that. We absolutely know that. So thank you very much. I just had to say that. I forgot to do it at the beginning, but yeah. And kia ora. Yeah. So then in mātauranga, because health for us is about keeping people alive, really. You know, it's one thing to do things for people, like the sister Hai too said. It's one thing to talk about it. It's another thing to do. So instead of watching our people fade away and die from all sorts of diseases, we put our money there first in wellbeing. And then we put our money into emergencies. So 50% of all our funds at the moment for distribution go into health. And the other 20% is actually going to people living in emergencies. The Trust, what I haven't mentioned yet, looks after our people living in New Zealand and overseas. So the flooding and stuff that happened overseas, and when COVID hit the world in 2020, we had grants and kai going across the world. But that's what our tupuna have encouraged us to do, and we had the pūtea, so like the sister said, we did it. Put everything else aside and did what we needed to. And then we moved into education, because without education, it's really hard now. I remember when I was younger, I got my first job when I came back from uni, graduated, went to a tangi, and then someone told me, oh, congratulations on your new job. I was like, what job? Well, I didn't apply for no job. Oh, you talked to Uncle Rawiri Te Whare, and so he reckons that you're the next manager. I was like, hey? So I started my career for my people through a conversation at a tangihanga. And it's been like that ever since, over 30 years in it. And that's how we do it, our people. So mātauranga, we realise that our whānau need opportunity. Absolutely need opportunity. Our kids are not the ones being asked to do this, that, or the other, or see things. So we've created a space. We're doing what everyone else is doing, grants, scholarships, etc. We went a little bit deeper, because when we ran our first camp, I love our kids because they're honest. I really want to be a doctor. Oh, cool. What subjects do you take? And then the next part of the sentence was, but I haven't been going to school. Like, oh, bro, okay. Do you really want to do it? Yep. So took that kōrero back, and because a lot of our kids were saying it, they were a little bit whakama, but at least they were honest, so we could do something. Took it back to our board and we started providing private tuition to all our kids. This year we've sponsored about 350 to go and do those things that they need to do. It's not just about remedial, our tamariki who we should be offering. If someone just wants to do well in life, then we're going to support them as well. So it's not that, it's for everyone. So our camps that we're talking about, we run them from age 10 to 18. So 10 to 12-year-olds, kia mau, which means to get ready for life. 13 to 15-year-olds, kia tu, to stand up and start doing what you've been learning on our camps and in the life with the whānau. And then kia manawa nui, to be courageous with what you have. Because we're all dealing with it, patua te whakama. We're all dealing with it, but more so for our kids. So we provide them with the space. It used to be at a private camp, now we're back on our marae, and they love it. 80% of the whānau who are coming in have never stood on our marae. We don't want them coming back just for tangihanga. We want them to know that that is their place, and they have a place to stand amongst us. So you know how I'm from the Kainga, so I know how we are with our townie cousins when they show up. So I don't want the kids to have that experience, like you kind of belong, but you kind of don't. Yeah. So already they belong. My son, when he saw the flooding up in Auckland, one of the kuia belonged to our trust. She was being taken out on a sheet, and he recognised her daughter. He said, "Mum, that's such and such's mum. What are we doing for them?" In one camp, a 3-day camp, my son had connected to his whanaunga that he'd never met before. Then I knew what we were doing was working. It was the only driver of the camp, that they will connect one to another and take care of each other. So that's our mātauranga. When we got to our first round of graduates, that 16 to 18-year-old camp, they said, "Our dam," basically the words, "Our dam, I'm 18 now and now I can't even do anything with the trust anymore. Can you find a way to bring us back?" So we started an internship program. Just going to go to the photo. So down the bottom is our first group of graduates. We made our own program. We're Māori, we just make our own stuff. So we made our own program, and those are our first graduates. Some famous Rotorua faces on there. Mr. Bana may be in the room. Rawiri Bana, he used to work for our trust. They came through. Those 18-year-olds who basically moaned, but that's how you get stuff sometimes, right? You got to moan, you got to make a noise. They moaned and they said, "Hey, what about us?" So we created an internship program. We've been doing it for about 8 years now. We have about 40 kids come through. They graduate as 18-year-olds. They come back for 2 years and train as junior leaders in our trust. And then some of them are offered, they want to come and work for the trust, because then they tried the line again. "Oh, you're going to get rid of me now, but now I need a job." So some of them work for us, some of them don't, and they're off doing their own thing somewhere in the world. But that's them standing at our marae, Ohaki marae, back in Reparo. Again, a moment in time where we had one moment where she used to be at Wharapaina Native School, as a school at Reparo, that a lot of our parents and our grandparents went to. She was a teacher, and her granddaughter graduated that day. She's in the photo. And she hadn't stood on the marae since she left about 50 years ago. And she brought all her tamariki, all her mokopuna, and they cried when they got to the gate, but they were coming home. So that's what that is. The top photo, again, that's our Toi Ora Whānau Day. I just couldn't find anything more than a cow. I'm sorry about it, but so we do land and food. Food being the main word, kai. So we own 4 farms. None of them are within our rohe. 2 of them are up in Te Whaiti Minginui, and then the others are in the Taupō region. And then we own some avocado orchards in the far north. So really it is about kai, but about building our capacity to understand how to do it so that we can bring it home for our own people. The bottom photo, you may recognise it. We got into tourism a couple of years ago. We're the proud owners of Tāmaki Māori Village, just out of Rotorua. Managed to, actually it is sad, because when Doug Tāmaki passed away, his share in the business became available. So we bought that, but we understood that we bought it because somebody lost their brother. So we've always awhied in that space, but we now own Tāmaki Māori Village, and we own a jet boat operation that's adjacent to our land. And that's got a purpose. That's about us telling our own story. If you've got tourist operations or people that talk about you on your own land, it's really annoying. So the only reason, a little bit of Māori pride, I guess, was to buy it. so that we can control the narrative. We'll let people what we want them to know, not what someone else thinks they should be saying about us. So that's our tourism operation. But what we're all here for today, I just wanted to give you a bit of a background so you could understand who we are and what we are, is our housing. Like all good trusts, we like to listen to our owners. If you've ever been to an AGM, particularly for any form of Māori trust, whether you're a marae, a whanau, like us, a ahu whenua, there's that saying, happy wife, happy life. It's the same sort of thing with owners, because they really are the people who own the whenua. So when we look at developing or doing things, we make sure some of these points are covered off before we actually do it. So for our housing kaupapa, hei painga mō ngā uri whakatupuranga, the first request came from our owners. We run our annual owner wānanga, where we travel around New Zealand and to Australia, into the highways and the byways, I guess, to talk with our whānau kānohi ki te kānohi. Owners only. And they tell us how we're doing. Sometimes we're doing good and sometimes we're not, and they'll make sure we know that. And then other times they say, could you please think about this? I mean, I'm paraphrasing, it comes out a little bit differently. Could you think about housing? So owners wānanga said it repeatedly over a number of years, and then we went back to our trust order. Like every good trust, you have to look at your rules and whether you're allowed to do stuff. We've got a set of objectives at the beginning of our trust order, and one of them allows us, in fact, it encourages us to house and look after our people. So tick from the owner, tick from the trust order. Let's start doing it. 1 + 2 = 3. So in 2018, we began our housing journey as a trust. Mana said to me, go undercover. Okay, so we own a charitable entity called the Charitable Company. Go with that. Okay, so when is that? Me and my colleague Iwi Tufau, who if you're from Rotorua, everyone knows Iwi. So we roll in, and to make it even better for us, they didn't have our registration ready yet. So I went into the hui, no names. And then I walk out and Iwi's getting interviewed by the TV. And I was like, Iwi, get off. And I was like, texting Mana, I'm really sorry, but Iwi's just ended up on the 6 o'clock news. The undercover has been busted. Yeah. So we went to the National Māori Housing Conference in Ngarawahia. That's the main reason why I'm standing on the stage today. Because it was from that conference that we learnt how to do the do. We went to all the papakainga, we met the tūna whānau. Later on, because they ended up being in a conference we held, I managed to go in their whare. That was my whole goal after I left that conference, was to get in that house and have a look. I'm one of those nosy people. So we went and we listened. So I want to thank the committee and those of you who led the way for us to be able to sit in this space and listen to our own people. Not listen to everybody else telling us what's good for us, but just listen to our own people and share what we're doing, and maybe it's going to be of some help to you, because that's what I got as someone who knew absolutely nothing about housing except how to live in one. I learnt it in the National Māori Housing Conference held by Waikato Tainui, and ever since we've attended. I'm going to speed through our story so you can see where we've got to from then. So 2019, like I said, if there's nothing else going, we decided, well, if there can be a National Māori Housing Conference, then we can run a conference. So we ran our own conference. We brought in people from housing, employment, all over the place. But the people that we brought in for the housing component of our conference, and I see that he's going to be honoured tonight, was Matua Ricky Houghton. I have to say, he was our keynote, and within 2 minutes I was standing outside the whare, and I could hear all this clapping and cheering, and I thought, man, he's only been on for 2 minutes. I walked back in, and it was like there was a rock star on the stage. There was some sort of party going on in there. He was talking, they were clapping, he was talking, they were laughing. You could hear it was booming through the Tamaki Māori village. Ricky Houghton. We were so honoured to have him amongst us. He said, if you're ever up north, please come. So those avocado orchards that I was talking about, we went up north, and we knew what he'd said to us. So we went. We went to that converted pub and cafe, and I had to laugh because he's clever, eh? He was so clever. there were all these Pākehā people in there, old white Pākehā ladies who you could tell were rich, they were blinged up. Place was packed, like about 30 of them. And he goes, do you know my strategy, bub? And he goes, I was looking around the room, I was like, they're rich. He goes, yeah, and they give me money. Every month, I hold a morning tea or something like that for them, and they come in, and then they tell their husbands, and then they give me money. I was like, man, that's clever, all right? Yeah. And then and on top of that, everyone that had ever given him any pūtea, their names on a banner when you go to that place or on a board, and you're eating outside having your kai, you can see all the people who are giving into this kaupapa, and he told the beautiful story about all the people living there and the training programs that he'd set up for the rangatahi. Then we drove out to the papakainga. I'll never forget that time, but it all came from this gathering. The tūna whānau came and talked about their muscle business and their beautiful home that they have. Te Puni Kōkiri, Paul Sharon, if he's around here, and TK from Here Taunga, they came to support us. He's also doing some of our building for us. We just had a number of people. Who we've stuck alongside the most out of all the government agencies, and we're quite open about it, is the only Māori door into the government. Te Puni Kōkiri, the Ministry of Māori Development. I don't say it to Greece for more money. I'm just saying it because it's true. We learnt early to sit alongside, and then we learnt early what partnership actually looks like. So they've helped us a lot, to be honest, to understand the space that we were heading into. So after we held our wānanga, there's a year missing. I wasn't going to give any mana to that word COVID, so I didn't make my presentation this morning, but 2020 COVID hit. We decided to change tack and look after our whānau. So many of you will know the school and lunch program. We run that now. We had to shut our tāmaki business. We reopened and partnered with Kāpai Kai Rotorua. We're delivering now 7,000 lunches, about 4,000 out of there, and every school in Whakatane, we look after them as well, along with our whānau from Kāpai Kai, who are really the leaders in the kaupapa. We just jumped on the coattails of people that were trailblazing so that we could awhi the kaupapa. A lot of us were talking about how cool the lunches are. We talked about, most of us in my staff room, the common lunch was a sauce sandwich and all those types of things, and luncheon. And when you see the kids' lunch, it's like a full-on, you go out for dinner sort of kai. So our kids are really fortunate. So that's what we've done. And then we went into into whenua. So we took a DOC contract to look after our whenua and some of the power stations, etc., that we operate with. So then in 2021, we headed back to Hastings, to the National Māori Housing Conference. By then, our contingency grew because we managed to talk it up. And you should see all the houses and they're brand new and So we went over to Here Taunga, and then our board decided, you know what, we're going to do it. We're going to do it now. We're past COVID. Let's start doing the housing thing. So in 2021, we opened Tauhara Kainga, which is a charitable entity, for those of you who like to understand structure, sitting underneath our charitable company. We were then awarded funding for housing back home in the Reparoa. We're clever Māori, we knew that if we didn't look after our people at home that we were going to get it. So we built houses for them first. And then last year, we did our first groundbreaking with Minister Jackson, if he's in the room, at Waimahana. We're the marae who statue on polystyrene blocks, because one of our kaumātua thought it would be a good idea, so that he was actually sitting on insulation. He didn't know, I don't know if anyone told him, but there were these big concrete blocks. So he came and opened the groundbreaking for that marae. The reason why I put that marae there, it was closed for 40 years. So most of my life never opened. One project, opening the marae, and people are going to go and live back there. 4 buildings will be duplexes for kaumātua and 7 houses for rent on that project. So we went from having nothing to all of a sudden gearing up in February, groundbreaking, and they're building houses out there right now. And then we decided, based on everything that we'd learnt, you can't keep it to yourself, you've got to share it. So we designed our own Papakainga 101, borrowed things from here, there and everywhere, and held online Zui for months, back to our whānau, so that they would be able to do it for themselves. Māori building on their own land. Everyone that presented was either a CEO, an executive, or well, it was people like that. And then we came back and we presented with all the people who know what to do with it, all that information. And we've made a booklet. So that was our Papakainga 101 in 2022. Then partway through that year, we were awarded some more money to look after the 80% of our whānau that are living away from home. And some of them are in Tamaki Makaurau. It was a big decision for us, and I'll talk about that shortly. And then this year, we became the managers of 7 Māori housing developments. And last month, we went to Te Mahurihuri Marae at Point Chev with Whaia Christine, who is Ngāti Tahu as well, just like me. And her son-in-law is a shareholder of Tauhara North No. 2 Trust. And none of that we knew until we met them at a hui. So we don't believe in coincidence. All of a sudden, we were all coming back together for our people. So we met with our whānau about our development up in Hamlin, Mount Wellington, that I'll talk about shortly, at Te Mahurihuri. Really cool kōrero from the whānau, straight up as just how you like it. There's no beating around the bush in a whānau hui. And so we took from that some ideas to help us develop in the future. Same strategy. What do we do first? Make sure that we check this trust order that we can operate outside of. It doesn't tell us location, it just says we've got to help the people. So yes, we can do it. For our homes back at Repro, this is Repro only, we decided we'd be the project manager. We could have done it ourselves, but we decided no. Let's help our whānau, our marae and our ahuwhenua trust to access some funds, use the name of the trust and the skills of the trust we'll project manage so they can have the kainga. That's exactly what we've done. In 2021, when we were awarded that, we decided that so there's 27 houses in total. Some of them I've already talked about, the 7 on the Ahuwhenua Trust. 16 of those will be kaumātua houses. We're going to build, own and operate until the landowners are ready to take them over, and that at no cost to them, those houses will be transferred. So we haven't asked for any pūtea. All we've asked is that they please take care of it and they get ready for when they come. So 27 houses in Aotearoa. The next one that I'll finish on is our mahi that we're doing in Auckland. I just saw it on the weekend. Unbelievable. My son, he's 14, he said, "Is that ours, Mum?" I said, "Yeah, that's ours." We were just standing there, just freaking out that something like that. I think for us, especially as Māori, what I didn't actually mention, the whānau, we thought about the last time a brand new house was built by a Māori in Reporoa, and we went back about 30 years. Because usually when someone moves, everyone just grabs all the stuff off their house and you whack it onto yours. No one's really had a new house. Hey. But we're talking new house. 2 houses we could think of going back 30 years until this moment. One of those houses is already being lived in. So back home, that's the story back home. This is the story for Tamaki Makaurau. When we did an initial mail out to over 1,000 people, we got 271 people come back and say, "We'd like to apply to live in your whare." Just to get your bearings, I had to understand this and see this map a million times. A block away is Sylvia Park in Auckland. That's the Mount Wellington countdown on the right, that big building. That's the Mount Wellington Rugby Park. And then the pink box is our housing development. And we got shamed out in Auckland when we went up there last month because one of the guys was like, are you the guys who knocked over the Mount Wellington Rugby Club? We said, actually, we bought it already consented and planned. It was the previous people. I said, why is that? I'm an old boy of the Mount Wellington Rugby Club. I played for them for 30 years. So I promise you we didn't knock down your rugby club. But that's, if you know Auckland, that's where we are. Those grounds are being turned into 2 apartment buildings. So 30 apartments, 9 one-bedroom, 15 two-bedroom, and the rest are 3-bedroom. In Mount Wellington at the moment, we know from tenancy service data that the average price for a house up there or an apartment up there of this size and scale ranges between $375 and $550. We promised the whānau that we wouldn't price them out of the market. Just so you know, I'm not making a plug, but for all the Te Puni Kōkiri funding we've received, these have to be collectively owned rentals, so they are only available for the whānau to rent. This side over here, this is the one facing the rugby park, where our kids are going to start playing one day. So 2 big office blocks, 2 stories high, and it didn't sound very high, like I'm saying, until I went there on Sunday, and it's towering over the park. They're going to have one of the best views in Auckland when our whānau move in. Oh. So this is, these are, forgotten the proper word, but this is what they're going to look like on the inside. Everything's going to be brand new, high-end, sleek, modern, warm, safe for the whānau to move into. It was funny, and I can say it now because it wasn't funny back then, but someone told me that we were putting fridges in there, so I said it from the front, only to find out afterwards that we weren't putting fridges in there, but I'd already said it in the whānau hui, so now we're putting fridges in all the 30 apartments. It's still going to have the normal stuff that you get when you rent, but yeah, we're putting a lot of the gear in there so that the whānau, they move into a new whare and they feel good about the whare. They don't have to worry about trying to cart some of their stuff up the stairwell or whatever. The things are already waiting for them. In total, these 30 apartments, if they are at full capacity, will house 108 whānau members. So along with our housing at Reparoa, within a 2-year time span, we would have housed just over 200 people. And for a trust that's never done it before, and we started from zero back in 2018 at the New Zealand Māori Housing Conference in Narawahia, we're just proud of what we've done. But I tell you what, everyone that we've heard since in this hui and on those papakainga, they're the people who inspired us to keep moving forward. So I thank you if you were in those conferences, because what you said really meant a lot to us. And we really took it in so that we could do it ourselves. One of the interesting things that came out of our whānau wānanga at Te Māhurihiri last month, and it doesn't come as a surprise to any of us, at our camps, the kids want to know, is this my marae? What's my iwi? How do I whakapapa to this trust? The same thing happens with their parents. They all want to connect to their tauharatanga. In fact, that has become number one in this housing development. You can give me anything else, but give me my whakapapa first. So we committed to that. We've brought this housing development to Manaaki, our whānau, living outside of Arohe, and we're going to give them back their whakapapa that they're hungry for. They're hungry for it. They haven't known, they haven't been able to connect. I thought to myself when I was standing outside that apartment building, one day people are going to be walking through it saying, hello auntie, hello uncle, hello cuzzy. Auntie, have you got any sugar? You know, all that stuff. Instead of happening around the marae, it's going to be happening in Mount Wellington, Auckland, at our kainga. We always try and hang whatever we do on the Te Puni Kōkiri whānau or the outcomes. I sound like an advert. I'm really not. It's just like if they knew it and they knew these were the things that could tell us how well our whānau were doing and that we could do better with better things for them, then let's use something that's already there. But we kind of changed it a little bit because we're from the country, so we need to get it into our own language, just make it happen and help people to stand on their own 2 feet. That's what this kainga is about. Help them to connect, help them to know how to make their money work. I promised my husband I wouldn't do this, but I have to. He's Pākehā. So when I married him, I didn't used to get my car serviced, you know, all that sort of stuff, mate. And he got his car serviced. He's like, when was the last time your car got a service? I was like, but he knew that I didn't do it. And he had all these bank accounts. I was like, what are you doing? Like, do I not know something about you? But he managed money in a totally different way than I did. I had one bank account and I spent it. That was the goal. And he had this whole thing going on. I was like, why is there money going to the Honda mechanic? Like, what are you doing? Like, no, if you put it in, then when you need to get your car fixed, you probably put enough money in there on credit that you don't really have to pay. It's like, clever. Hey. But so, we used to argue about money all the time. First month of our marriage, we moved to Reparoi, and there were like 3 or 4 tangi. You know how it is, they all happen one after the other. And he sits me down, first fight, and he goes, do you really know these people? I'm like, hold on. And we were living in my whanau house, and he had the cheek to say something like that. Hey, they gave, when my mum died, when my nan died, they gave this and that. Yeah. And he just got the whole, and he's had to live with it ever since. And he always says to me, if you only learn how money worked. So the kaupapa as well of this is to help our people to learn how money can work for you. Because this is just a stepping stone to where they're going. We don't aspire for our whānau to live in an apartment. I don't know whether you can put a Māori in an apartment for very long. Because we knock down walls. We do all sorts of stuff in our apartments. So I don't know if you can actually do it. This is just a stepping stone for wherever they're going in life, and we want to be that support for them to do it. But most of all, Manaaki whenua, Manaaki tangata. They came with those thoughts themselves in this hui. What about parakore? They went to the Waikato Tainui Games and someone taught them about how to look after the whenua, recycling and all those types of things. They want it, and they actually ask for it in that hui. Our people know what they want. I heard that. They know what they want if you give them the opportunity to be heard. So we're not developing this as people sitting in the Rotorua trying to figure out what someone in Auckland needs, because I tell you what, I've never lived there, don't want to. Like, they've got problems. They're living with like a totally different set of issues. And we were hearing it from them and going, oh, how I never thought of that. But if we design something for someone else that's of no good for them, then what was the point? So our kaupapa is to build together, but to teach them our ways of old. I'll close with that first slide because it's really our goal at Tauhara North. Oops. We want them living like that kāinga, but wherever they go in life, knowing that they've got the 100% support of their people. We're behind them, we always will be, and nothing can take that away from them. Nō reira e te whānau, ko huhui mai nei i tēnei rangi. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.